What's up, everybody? Gridiron Gilly Show. I'm the host, Gridiron Gilly. I have Coach John Huffstetler with the Pittsburgh Pirates with me. Coach, how you doing?
Doing well, thank you.
Yes, sir. Thanks for allowing me to interview you. Usually how I do this, I just start out by asking you to talk about your coaching history, where you've coached at, and just your experiences along the way. So if you want to go ahead and do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's kind of a funny story. My first year coaching was actually in the Marine Corps. I served out at Camp Pendleton from 2011 to 2014, and had a couple Marines in my unit who played on our base league team. And they mentioned it to me. They were trying to convince me to play. I said, I don't want to play anymore, but I would like to go help. And so that was actually my first experience being a coach, was coaching those guys. And that's where I already had an interest in it. I've always enjoyed sports. Had a lot of respect for my coaches when I was in high school. Coach Meeks, who was my head coach at Mount Vernon, had a big influence on me and my interest in being a coach. But I was doing the military service at the time. And so being able to coach 2 seasons there on base was my first experience coaching. And that's where I kind of figured out, yeah, this is what I want to do long term, and started to look at my options for how I could get out of the Marine Corps and then transition back to Texas and get started. So that was my first experience. Was very lucky to have some connections with Coach Evans in Tatum. And so he hired me in 2015. I was there at Tatum from 15 and 16. Got the opportunity to join the staff at Gilmer for the 17, 18, and 19 seasons there. And then Coach Meeks' son, Ricky Meeks, who he and I were in high school at the same time, he was the head coach at Alto at the time. His defensive coordinator had retired, and so he said, if you'd like to come join me. So that was an opportunity for me to step up and take on a coordinator role. So we spent the year there in Alto, and then when he got the job in center, I went with him and was able to be with him in center for the last 4 years as the defense coordinator, and then fortunate enough to be considered here and started here as the head coach in January.
Well, I guess whenever January rolled around and you got that job, it was, an interview you did with the school, and you had mentioned that was the job that you had wanted and you had your eye on. You didn't apply anywhere else.
Yeah.
So what makes Pittsburgh special in your eyes?
Well, there's a number of things that I go back to. Geographically is probably the biggest indicator. I grew up in Mount Vernon, which is just 15 to 20 miles down the road. My wife grew up in Mount Pleasant. I mean, from our house in Pittsburgh to her parents' house, it takes us 9 minutes to get there. And so I know, just simply from a geographical standpoint, Cynthia and I have been away from this area for 10 years, and we've always looked for opportunities to get back closer to our parents and to our family. And so that was probably the biggest indicator. But there's other options in the area as well. And so the specific interest in Pittsburgh, one was I competed against Pittsburgh my whole life growing up in Mount Vernon. So we consider ourselves familiar with the community, the pride that they have for their football team, for athletics in general, the way that their community is very gritty, and our community here wants to compete and support those kids. So we were both familiar with the community, having competed against Pittsburgh as an athlete or a coach. Shared a district with them when I was in Gilmer for 3 years. So we just knew that if the opportunity presented itself, it would be a good fit for us personally, geographically, but then also we knew that the program had potential to be successful.
Yes, sir. So I would be remiss not to ask about your time in the military. So just tell me a little bit about that and how it shaped you and helped you prepare or prepared you for a career in coaching.
Yeah. I think the biggest experience that I got in the military that I probably lean on the most as a coach is, I served in Camp Pendleton, California with 11th Marines, and we had men in our unit from all over the country. And so you talk about different socioeconomical backgrounds, different racial backgrounds, different religious beliefs, different NFL team, fan bases, to whatever the conversation may go to, or whatever made up all those individuals. But yet we all had to learn how to be a team together. How are we going to train together? How are we going to support one another? How are we going to put the mission and being a Marine first? And how can we maybe even have our differences and not understand where everybody came from, but we can learn from one another. We can still love each other. We can still serve one another. And so the experience that I got dealing with so many different backgrounds, I think I pull on that pretty much weekly in terms of, our kids are the same way. The kids that you coach come from different homes, they come from different backgrounds. Everybody's not built the same. Everybody doesn't have the same experiences, but being able to find a way to connect with all your coaches, with all your players, with the students you have in class. I got a ton of that experience in the Marine Corps ahead of time. And so I would say that's the biggest experience that I draw on is the relationships and the people side of things. Um, Obviously, the things that most people expect from someone with a military background, the organization, time management, preparation skills, all of that definitely translates directly over to, being in charge of a program and day-to-day operations. And when difficulty comes up, how are we going to handle it? How are we going to continue to train and get better? So a lot of that stuff carries over as well. Doing a lot of the same things. We're still trying to build a team to go accomplish a mission. And that's what we did every day in the Marine Corps. So a lot of that carries over as well.
Exactly. Well, thank you for your service, Coach.
Thank you.
Tell me, this is your first year there in Pittsburgh as the head coach, but tell me what your expectations are for the program and the vision you have moving forward for the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Yeah, you say expectation. My expectations from the very beginning have been very much driven by beliefs and behaviors, attitudes, actions. I wouldn't say that there is a result expectation as much as there's an expectation that we teach and develop a certain set of belief systems that are then going to generate the behaviors and the actions that we think will lead to team success. And so we've been teaching since February our core beliefs of competitive excellence. If you're going to be in sports, you've got to have a competitive nature and one that's able to deal with circumstances that are out of your control, one that's willing to be selfless towards your teammates, to sacrifice for them, and to do, quite frankly, just whatever it will take in order for me to come out on top. And so we try to do things throughout the week, and with all of our sports that will develop a competitive trait within our athletes. I think that's a huge characteristic that they can take with them into the adult world, because ultimately everything is a competition. Everybody is trying to get the same job. Everyone's trying to achieve the same things. So your ability to handle adversity and compete in those circumstances is a big life lesson and characteristic that carries you through. So we started with that. The way we teach discipline and being a disciplined individual is we call it above the line. And we know that every circumstance and every situation requires a set of skills and behaviors that's got to be above the standard and above the line in order to accomplish what you want to. And so for us, being above the line is knowing what to do, knowing how to do it, and then knowing why you're supposed to do that. We try to apply that in every part of the day. There's always a what, why, and a how for what you're trying to accomplish. And then the last one is trust in the process. We define it as every outcome or every result has a process to get there. There's a certain path that you need to take in order to get to that point. And you've got to believe in it. You've got to stay committed to it, and you've got to be willing to trust it even whenever it looks like storms are coming or the boat's getting rocked. We've got to believe that, hey, the course that we set is what we're going to stay on, and it's what's going to get us there. So we worked on those three. And then the fourth one that we try to implement is to live an I'm third life. And that's putting God first, others second, and yourself third. And so I just believe that if all of us chose to live that way, to honor God with what you do, put everybody else around you first or second, and then let yourself be third. I think that's the best way to live your life, and I think good things happen to people who live that way.
It will certainly make the world a better place than what it is. Talk about this is opportunity now to talk about your players, and
Mhm.
if you want to, your coaching staff even, and then what you do schematically on offense and defense.
Well, I'll just start with our staff then, with it being the first year and trying to get a staff built that's got the ability to teach and develop the players. We're very, very blessed to have the two coordinators that we have on our staff. Brad Britton is a guy who I worked with in Gilmer for 3 years, and then I was very lucky that he was willing to come down to center last year and help me on the defensive side of the ball. And so our relationship goes back, I guess, close to eight years now that he and I've either worked together or known each other, stayed in contact. So there's a lot of trust there between me and him. We have a lot of the same beliefs in terms of how are we going to be successful on defense? What does that look like? And so that makes it very easy for he and I to work together. Plus, he's got over 30 years of experience, and so he's seen a lot and has a lot of really good ideas and vision for how we're developing and teaching our defense. So that was a big one for me. And then Wesley Schoen is our offensive coordinator, and that was one that I would say was a God thing. I can't take any credit for that. I didn't know Coach Schoen prior to arriving here in Pittsburgh, but the great thing about coaching in East Texas is you develop a network and a fraternity, and you tend to take care of each other. And I was just very lucky that there was guys who I've worked with who knew Wesley and who strongly recommended him and kind of put a plug in for him and said, "Hey, you need to interview and you need to look at this guy." And so we did, and it just worked out that he was ready to make the move and believed in what we were wanting to do here in Pittsburgh. And he's been a home run in terms of bringing the offensive philosophy that he had, and that was one thing that was important to me when he and I visited. Without prompting him, he had a lot of the same beliefs and vision for our offense that I already had planned as well, and so that made it very easy to go ahead and make that connection. We brought a total of 7. We have 4 guys who stayed on from last year, and those guys have been awesome. Russell Crane, Coach Perez, Coach Wood, and Coach Miner. Those guys have stayed and bought into what we're doing and continue to pour into our kids and are growing our system. And I'm so appreciative of them being willing to stick it out and stay here with me and continue to try to get things turned. And then on the defensive side, Coach Cloudy and Coach Shields were at center with us. And so being able to continue with that relationship and get them to come was a big support for us. Coach Reynolds is our defensive line coach, great D-line coach, been in the game a while, coached against him in Rusk, and so knew the work he was able to do with his D-line there in Rusk. Was able, again, didn't know him personally, reached out to him, was able to create a situation where he would come here, and that's been helpful. Coach Schoen brought our running backs coach with him from Pine Tree, Coach Robertson, another home run guy, done a great job teaching our backs and then helping Coach Schoen with the offense. And then we were able to hire Coach Jimerson, who played here. He was a last-minute hire, and we were very lucky that he was in a position where he could step in and help us, and he's been helping with our wide receivers. And so very excited and thankful for our staff. Those guys have done a great job being committed to the things that I asked them to do, being committed to our players, being great teachers, being great motivators, and helping them believe in the things that we're doing. So that's the staff. I think you wanted me to talk about maybe what we do on each side of the ball.
Yes, sir.
Schematically. Yeah. We're 3-4 defense base. So our base front is an on front with 3 down, 4 linebackers. We play what most would say is traditional kind of quarters match concepts behind it. And then we try to do some things in there post snap to maybe change the picture on the quarterback and present some 4-man fronts with post snap movements with some rotational coverages on the back end is generally the gist of what we do defensively. And then offensively, we are a 2-back, what I would call a 2-back spread offense. Play with 3 receivers, fullback or running back most of the time. We like to run gap schemes, so power and counter with some inside zone mixed in, and then try to do what we can to get the ball out in the RPO quick game. And then if we can protect it, we've got kids that can run, and we can throw it over the top. We have a quarterback that does a really good job of throwing the deep ball. So we're very lucky with our players, we inherited a very good roster, kids who play hard, and we're very fortunate to have the players that we have, and the skill set that they provide matches our scheme and the things that we want to do on both sides of the ball. So that's been a blessing in terms of having the personnel that matches the scheme that we want to run, and being able to utilize those guys in the best way we can.
Yes, sir. So Pittsburg, 4A Division II, Region 2, District 7. You got Pleasant Grove in your district, Gilmer, Van, Spring Hill, and North Lamar. And
Correct.
then, of course, Pittsburg. Do you start district this next week? I know you got to buy this week, but do you start it next week?
Yes, we do.
Okay. And then so far, backtracking, you played Liberty Allo, victorious. DeKalb, you came up victorious. Grace Community, you won that one. And then you took a tough loss to Jefferson. That was a great game, though.
Yeah.
Hard fought, but you happened to come out on the short stick on that one.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just beat Dallas Christian this past week, okay? So if you want to get into district, if you want to talk about the district and the games coming ahead, you can do that now.
Sure. Well, we know our toughest games are ahead of us. We've known that kind of from the beginning with how the schedule plays out. Your district games are always going to be more intense. There's a lot more at stake now. Playoff spots are on the line, all of that. And so we knew going into it that the most competitive games we're going to play are ahead of us. But we are fortunate and we're thankful for the competitive games that we've already had. The Liberty Allo game right off the bat was a tough one, and one that we knew we had to play well in early to give ourselves a chance to win. They've done a really good job there, Coach Willard and his staff, with getting them back to being more competitive. They're always going to have really good players you have to deal with. So that was really good for our mental psyche to be able to come out week one and win right away and kind of get the monkey off your back with our older kids who've been, not had the opportunity to win much. And so showing them that, yes, we can compete, we can win, that was big. And then our last two games, honestly, I think were great for us. We didn't come out on top the Jefferson game. We struggled to execute at times when we needed to, and it showed. And we felt like we had opportunities that we could have won the game, and we just weren't quite there. And so then to come back the next week and find ourselves in another tight one going into overtime and finding a way, whatever it looked like, to come out on top, I think there's just so many lessons in those two games that we're going to be able to draw on as we get into district play, because it certainly does not get any easier. And the first one right off the bat with Gilmer is going to be an extremely tough game. Again, I've been there, I've coached there, I know the traditions, I know exactly what the process looks like for them. And there's a lot of people who are going to be looking at them and saying, well, look at their record, this, that, and the other. And we're not foolish enough to think that the record is any indicator of what type of team they have. They've played a gauntlet of a schedule against really, really tough competition that's done nothing but make them more competitive. And we know they'll use the bye week to get healthy and to get prepared. And if we have any expectation of going into Gilmer and winning, then we've got to have a really good week this week, and we've got to get prepared, and we've got to have our best when that game rolls around. And then the rest of the district, there's not an easy week, to be quite frank. Van's always traditionally good. They're a playoff team every year. They've got great culture, great tradition. Pleasant Grove is consistently a top state contender, just like Gilmer is. And then for the last few years, Spring Hill's been a playoff team. And so you can't sleep on them either. And North Lamar's got a really tough scheme to deal with, and they've got disciplined kids who play hard. So you're not ever going to have a week from here on out that you can let your guard down. We've got to constantly be in a get better mindset and attack the process mindset.
When I looked at that district, I don't know much about Van, but I know they finished third in the district last year and made the playoff. And then I know Pleasant Grove and Gilmer, they're always, like you said,
I
top
think
contenders.
Van played late in the year too, I believe, even though they finished third, but I think they were still playing in the third round last year. So no, it's extremely competitive, but that's East Texas,
Yeah, wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah, it came from the district down there in center, and it's the same way. You You got Carthage, and you've got Athens, and you've got Bullard, and you've got other schools in that district that you just, I mean, Rush beat us 3 out of 4 years, I believe, and like you can't let your guard down in East Texas. It's just you're not going to get away from competitive teams in districts that make you have to bring your best every week.
Absolutely, that's exactly right. Coach, what's the value of a head coach in your opinion?
What's the value of a head coach?
Yes, and I'll elaborate real quick. So at a football game, it was like the first game of the season. Someone asked me, "There's a what do head coaches do?" Because I see they look like they just sit there on the sidelines and don't do anything. You got
Yeah,
coordinators calling these plays and this, that, and the other. So I was like, fair point. Let me ask the coaches and hear it from their perspective. So
sure.
that's the reason for the question.
I don't know that I can say the value of a head coach. I'll try to answer it this way by saying, what do I think my role is? Um, I think it's my responsibility, number one, to set vision and establish expectation, standard, and culture. I think every day I do my best um, to model that. The things that we say that we're going to be about. If we're going to be a disciplined above the line team, then it's my responsibility to demonstrate that to our staff and to our players. If we're going to display competitive excellence, how am I doing that? What am I modeling? What am I showing? And if we're going to trust the process and live an Iams third life, I think my role and value in the program is: are you continuing to direct and give vision, and then are you demonstrating those things? Are you showing and setting an example to your staff and to your players of what that looks like, and providing that for them? And so, yeah, I think you're right. A lot of times, I do find myself a lot of times standing and watching, and that's been an adjustment for me, having been a position coach and a coordinator. It has been an adjustment, but that's why you also hire great people. And so I think that's another part of what's the value of a head coach. Well, I think it's the head coach's responsibility to recruit and acquire the best football coaching talent that you can, and get those coaches willing to come join you, and then pour in and let them do what they do. You hired them for a reason. They're hired to coach and to train and develop. And so I think the value that the head coach can bring is, can they get the best coaches on the staff to help your athletes be successful? So I don't know if that answers the value, but I know that I think that's my responsibility and my role, and I try to live up to that each day.
That was probably one of the best answers I've got on that question.
Well,
Honestly, that's pretty much it for those type of questions. I'll ask you a couple more questions,
okay.
scenario, and then we'll wrap up. But would you rather win a game 6-0 or 62-58?
It doesn't matter. I mean, that was one thing I learned from Coach Meeks working with him the last 5 years. Is he would always say, just one more. That's all we need. We just need one more than the other team. And it doesn't matter what it looks like. And I had to learn that, the first couple years there in center, we were very much tempo, fast paced, offense oriented. I think the second year there, we averaged over 52 points a game, and I'm the defense coordinator, and we're winning, but we're giving up 35 and 40 points, and we're still winning. And so I had to learn, hey, you're winning. And if this is what winning is going to look like for us, then we need to embrace that, and we need to be okay with that. Because at the end of the day, all you have to have is one more than the other team. And we won a couple of games there, 13-12, 10-7. And so it can go any way. But at the end of the day, hey, if we have the point more than them when the clock says zero, then we found a way to work together and get the job done. And so I don't know that I really care what the score looks like, as much as, things like our team this past week. Would we have rather won in regulation? Yes. We started out with a 17-0 lead. I mean, we jumped out 17-0, and then that lead whittled away throughout the game, and we look up and with 17-7 going into overtime. And what do we want? Did we want it to look like that? Not necessarily, but the fight and the resolve and the willingness to just keep keep rowing the boat together, which is what we talked about last week. That was our theme. We've got to all be willing to keep our paddle in the water and keep the boat moving forward, whatever that looks like. Wherever you're asked to sit, however you're asked to do it, you just keep doing your job and moving the boat forward, and we'll find a way to come out on top. And they did that. And so, I guess maybe I want to win that way every week. A team playing together, continuing to believe in what they're doing and not quitting and not giving up the fight until the end and until you find yourself on top.
Usually coaches say those high-scoring games – I like the way you answer that because usually coaches say them high-scoring games like that will take years off your life. But I know a lot about center. I work in center, and I know the last few years center has won a lot of games. Like you said, 50-something to 40-something type games. So if you were the guy on the defensive side of the ball, then I respect that answer. It doesn't make you a bad coordinator. It just means
it just looks different. Points per game and points per possession are two very different stats. And so a lot of people don't get the points per possession stat, but that's the one that to me is the better one to look at.
I've seen a lot of great coordinators too go up against Carthage, and it doesn't always, hardly ever goes their way. Next question: game-winning touchdown or goal line stand?
I think if you want entertainment and excitement, you're going to go for the game-winning touchdown. We had that last week. We walked off. I mean, overtime, they got the ball first. Was super proud of our defense forcing a field goal. So we had to make a goal line stand. They had the ball first and goal inside the 10, and our defense bowed up and made a stop and put them in a situation where they had to decide, you're going to go for it on fourth down or you're going to kick it and take your points. They decided to kick it. So I guess we got both last week. We got overtime goal line stand to force a field goal, and then we turn right around and we run, quarterback power for a touchdown to walk it off and to end the game with a touchdown. So why not have both? But I think both kind of give you different feelings. Most people want the excitement of scoring and winning the game, being defensive minded. I think nothing says more than the character and the resolve of a team than a defense's willingness to dig in and find a way to get a stop. And so I think they both have different attributes to it and show different characteristics of your team.
Absolutely. I'll ask you this scenario and then one more question and we'll be done. Scenario is scores 23-20. You're down by 3, so you have 20 points. 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter. You get the ball on your own 35-yard line, and it's 3rd and 8. If you get the first down, then you can pretty much just whittle the clock down as best as you can. But if you don't, my question for you is, do you go for the fourth or do you punt and play field position? Because, a 23-20 game is a pretty good defensive game in my opinion.
We're down. We're losing.
With 6 minutes left, 23-20.
23-20 with 6 minutes left. We don't get the first down, so it's 4th and, say, 8 from our own 35. Yeah, we're punting. So, to your point, at that point, if you're sitting at 23 from the other team in the fourth quarter, then you probably feel okay. But again, a lot of that is feel. A lot of that is conversations that you got to have in the game with both sides of the ball in terms of how do we feel about this? We had a few of those scenarios last week where we could have kicked a field goal and we didn't. And some people probably scratched their head as to why we didn't, because we have a really good kicker and he's already made 2 from 40 plus. And so we feel like if we can get the ball inside the 40 that we've got points, and we didn't kick. Number one, our defense was playing well. Number two, we were trying to be aggressive and keep the ball moving and try to get 6 out of it instead of 3. And so, but no, in that scenario, I think as long as you feel like the defense is playing well, you got to try to flip field position. You still got plenty of clock on your hands, especially now with the 2-minute warning. That's played a big factor in things now. So essentially, you're sitting with 4 timeouts at that point, and so you've got a clock stoppage in there that doesn't cost you anything. So no, I'd say with our team this year and our philosophy, we're going to kick it, try to get a 3 and out, and flip the field on you.
Okay. And the last question, I got to use my phone for this one. But So one of my best friends from the police academy, he's from Pittsburgh, and he works for Kent County Sheriff's Office. And
Okay.
my question is, if someone comes to Pittsburgh this year and wants to watch y'all play at Pittsburgh, where should they get a bite to eat at in Pittsburgh? What's a good restaurant in Pittsburgh? Well, I asked him that question yesterday, and I'm trying to remember what he said. He said there's a place called Daisy's, and then there's a place called Peralta's. He's like, those two places are the places to go. But in your opinion, what do you think?
I think old Pittsburgh would say hot links. That's the tradition. That's what the town's known for. I think if you've never been to Pittsburgh and eaten in Pittsburgh, you'd be wrong to not at least go get a plate of hot links for the experience. But I think current Pittsburgh, I think Daisy's is probably at the top of everybody's list. They do it. They do a great job. But all of our restaurants, Herschel's, Peralta's, Papa Nachos, are kind of the big ones. I think everybody does a good job in town of giving a good product when it comes to the restaurant scene. So,
Amen. Well, that's what my buddy. He works at Camp County, and I was like, let me ask him since I'm going to interview Pittsburgh's coach. Let me see what he says.
yeah.
But that wraps it up, Coach. Thank you for your time. I look
Thank
forward.
you.
Like Pittsburgh, they got fifth in the district last year. Hopefully, we flip that. Hopefully, we get in the playoffs this year. I believe y'all will.
Yeah.
I like your philosophy. I like everything you're about and what you represent, Coach. I'm not just saying that either. I mean
Yeah.
that whenever I say that.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate what you're doing with the podcast and the interviews, and trying to get some positive light shed on East Texas football and what we do. Because ultimately, I believe that all of us are doing it to try to help the kids better themselves and set themselves up for success down the road. So, thanks for doing it.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I hope y'all stay healthy and have a great year. Okay.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
All right.
See you,
Bye.
Connor.